All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Unscripted Climb. It's Natalie here with Chris. He didn't want to do this intro, so I'm doing it.
You've
You,
just been doing them
you
so
always
far.
want me to
It's
do
just
the
kind of your
intro.
thing now. Oh,
We are psyched to have Mike Smith here. Mike's been a friend, mentor, just total inspiration, and honestly, like a big brother figure to me for the past decade that I've been in Lincoln, Nebraska. I met Mike when I was in local news interviewing this crazy guy who looked homeless about solving problems for kids. Wasn't quite sure 10 years ago. Now I fully understand that story. Mike is the previous founder of the Bay. I guess you still have that title.
Always be the founder.
Always be the founder, but now a consultant, a filmmaker, an adventurer, a father, which is the newest role to add to the list. Overjoyed to have him here because I've been trying to get him on, Chris.
yeah, I know.
We were talking about how to get Mike Smith on, and even though I'm friends with him, I know that Mike is ruthless with his time, especially now that he's a dad. So thanks for coming.
Of course. Thanks for having me on. I wanted to wait to come on until I felt like I had value to add. For a while, I was in dad mode where it was like, I hadn't seen how it is. 2-hour chunks, you're just changing diapers.
You're failing every day.
Every day, yeah. If they go to sleep and you get them to put down for a minute, you're like, all right, I did the thing. That was the job for a minute. But I'm feeling good, very excited to be here. So thanks for having me on.
And he's killing it in dad mode.
Working on it.
I got to see little soul. So we're going to talk about all the things. But first, for those of our viewers who do not know who you are, I want you to just kind of intro in the problem you were trying to solve when you started the Bay.
Yep.
And tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so 2010, I started the Bay. Just like a lot of millennials in that era, was like we were kind of pushed to like go make an impact, go make a difference. That was kind of like our thing. And so for straight out of college, straight out of like kind of into adulthood, I've always worked with young people in the nonprofit setting. From 18 until recently, I've never not worked at a nonprofit that was centered around impacting youth. And so that's kind of been the foundation of what I've done. And so in 2010, I was a social worker at Cedars, working with homeless runaway kids here in Lincoln. And part of my job responsibilities, I was the judge of teen court. So that meant any kid, it's a hilarious job. So any kid who got an MIP or a trespassing ticket or a vandalism ticket and you wanted it off of your record, you would go to this like fake court diversion. You'd go to this like fake court called teen court. So I was the judge. The jury was all these kids who had been in trouble, and depending on how bad of a thing you did, I would assign you jury duties every Tuesday. So if you like brought a real lawyer to a fake courtroom, I'd eat your whole summer up. I'd be like a million jury duties. But if you were like a kid who's, mom's going to have to drive you all over town, and this was really going to compromise her, and she's got to work at nights, I would be like very chill on the jury duty thing. But my job was like restorative justice. How do we rehabilitate these kids who did something dumb, get it off their record, and then get them back into, functioning society, and this isn't a part of their story anymore. And so I heard every kid in Lincoln, Nebraska's like dumb story for 2 years at the criminal level. And I realized very quickly that Nebraska kids are not good at crime. It's not a thing we excel at. They're too nice. They're not creative enough. They all go on Facebook and tell on each other. And so I'd sit there and listen to these kids like tell me these stories. And I was like, oh, I did way worse than that. I got away with way worse than that. So I realized very quickly, kids aren't bad. They're bored. It was just immediate. I was like, they're not bad. These kids aren't bad at all. They're just bored to death, and that's leading to doing these dumb things. And I grew up in a town with no stoplight, and I was like, there it is. Like, there's the Mike Smith problem that he can get really excited to go solve for the rest of his life. And I want to pause real quickly because people always say this whole follow your passion thing. And as a guy who has done a lot of things, passion, like I played college basketball, haven't touched a ball in 20 years because that was my passion, but it had an expiration date to it. And it was a thing that I did. And I think a lot of people go out and tell people to follow their passion, follow their passion.
Worst advice you can give someone.
Most people don't know what they're passionate about. And a lot of our passions aren't even an occupational opportunity.
Can the passion
Yeah,
even
totally.
become?
Cal Newport, everybody.
Yeah.
Cal Newport's research is the
really-
worst advice.
Yeah, I'm really passionate about the harmonica. What are you going to do with that? You know what I mean? Like, not a chance. There's ways to make money, but you get pretty far from just playing the instrument. So I go through this every day with kids at the Bay. They want to be pro skaters. It's their passion. It's not happening. Kids that want to play basketball, but they're 5'11" and white, like I was. You're not going pro. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these passions that we have, but that doesn't mean it should be your paycheck. And so when I realized kids weren't bad, they were bored and they needed somewhere to go, I thought, this is a problem I could commit to solving for the rest of my life. Like, that's really what we should be thinking about. Is like, what's a problem in this world that I get really fired up about that I could spend my time going and solving, because that's what work is. Like, that's what we wake up every day and do. You don't just wake up every day and do the thing that you're passionate about. Like, there's actual work involved. Right. So I was like, all right, kids need a place to go. I was sick and tired of working with kids after they got in trouble, realizing they got in trouble for the dumbest things of all time. So I was like, I'm going to open up a place. So I Googled how to start a nonprofit. got a bunch of recycled ramps because skate parks don't last long.
Were you a skateboarder then?
Ish. I would call myself a skateboarder-ish. Like I've done I grew up in Imperial, Nebraska, so you've got no access to skateboard culture, concrete. I mean, you're clear out in Western Nebraska, so you get it, you know. So you got a picture of being a kid in the 90s.
So you Google how to start a
nonprofit, tear down some abandoned barns, and I built a skate park in Westfield Mall. So like we put it right in the mall. And the reason I put it in the mall was really simple. I knew no one was going to trust some skate park in some warehouse where I could afford rent. Like some big giant warehouse on Y Street, which is where we are today. I was like, there's no way I can start there. I need to start someplace that parents will know about us. They'll trust me. They'll believe in this thing. So I put it smack dab in the middle of the Westview Mall.
that first spot. I walked by it. I would kind of peer in and go, why do we have that here? And keep it moving.
100%. It just kept, I knew if kids could get dropped off there and just hang, we'd be okay.
So the mall was like, go for it?
Well, of course. I mean, that's the clientele. If you're going to open up a place that's going to drive 100 middle schoolers on a random Wednesday there, Ayers is stoked. The food court is
Did they
stoked.
give you free rent?
No, God, no. And we battled the whole time. You got to imagine skateboarders and mall cops. Like it was an immediate
issue.
Oh, immediately. And I was caught in the middle constantly between our kids and the mall cops where it was like, yeah, the kids messed up. Yeah, the mall cops are right. Or yeah, the mall cops are being jerks. They're just kids. Like I was constantly in this like back and forth with it. But one night, a bunch of kids, it was like a summer night. We've been open for about 6 or 7 months. And I walked outside and I saw a ton of middle school kids just like sitting underneath the mall kind of parking lot where we were. And I hit them with the classic, like, hey, don't get in trouble thing. And of course they all went and got in trouble. And it was after that I knew we needed to be somewhere else. I needed to be open late. We needed to be at a place that could be open till 11 o'clock or midnight and actually keep kids out of trouble. In the mall, we had to close at 9 when the mall closed. And so we ended up getting into a warehouse on Y Street, and that was where we are today. And so now we're able to stay open late, open up at different hours, and be a true kind of drop-in center, third place for kids. And we're not so tied into what the mall's sort of timeline was, but really it was just a skate park in a mall that wasn't, it was DIY. We couldn't even afford paint for the place, and so I let all the kids who got in trouble for doing graffiti illegally tag the place and gave them community service hours for it. Looked awesome. It looked so sick. It looked like you were walking like a subway in New York and in between a Sears and a Radio Shack in Lincoln. You know what I mean? It looked so out of place for what it was, and it was so loud for its moment. We lasted about 18 months there and then moved into the spot on Y Street. And
how were you funding all this stuff?
Yeah, not very well. The first fundraiser, I lived under a bridge, basically homeless for a month in February, right after we opened, to raise 10 grand because we didn't have money. And then every year after that, in like May or June, I would skate across Nebraska. It's called Skate the State. So I would start in Wyoming, put my skateboard down and skate 400 miles back home. And so it would take me a week or more, and we would just...
And you raise money.
Oh, yeah. You're on Facebook, we're out here, and people are, stopping in, and you're raising money the whole way. And so, and this is 2010 when fundraising was not as easy as like pop up a GoFundMe and things go viral on 25 social media platforms.
It was super creative.
100%. Well, and it was I don't know how to be an executive director the regular way. And I didn't like and don't really prescribe to the ethos of the traditional nonprofit sort of routine and cadence of there's this really big foundation and you're going to go ask them for money and you're going to get this amount this year, this amount that year. And it's just like the pace of it's so slow. It's not very entrepreneurial, to be honest with you. Like I'm starting up a nonprofit, and then when you get into the nonprofit ecosystem, that ecosystem's not very entrepreneurial. It's much more, this is how it's always been done. You've got to pass, check these boxes. You have to know these people. And I didn't know any of these people or have any of those boxes checked. So I was like, screw it. I'm not going to ask any of you for any money. It's actually one of my favorite stories to tell, and I never get to tell this. The Sherwood Foundation is like, it's Susie Buffett. It's Warren's money, and Susie's doing her thing. And there's a lot of Omaha foundations that are, wealthy families whose kids have foundations and they give money away. And there's plenty of those. And the Sherwood Foundation is one of them. And there's a loan officer that I met in 2013. She was like, I had in my notes that we met in 2013 and then you never called me again. And I was like, and this is Sherwood, biggest money in the state. And I was like, absolutely. I've been ghosting you for a decade. And I was like, I actually tell kids about this all the time. And she was like, are you kidding me? And I was like, no, I've been ghosting you on purpose for 10 years because I knew, because of how nonprofits are wired, if she would have seen how the sausage was made in 2013, Mike's out speaking and doing all these crazy things to pay for this nonprofit, she would have never. They would have never given us money. They would have never believed in what we were doing. It was too out of the box, too not by their rules, didn't play by Omaha money. And so I tell kids all the time, they're like, oh, these famous people, I want to meet them. And I'm like, you're not ready. Like if you met that person now, what would you do? You'd ask them for a photo and there'd be no value add and there'd be nothing good that would come from it. And so I waited a decade, and now someone from the Sherwood Foundation is on the board at the Bay, and I tell her I've ghosted you for a decade on purpose because I wasn't ready. Like if I would have let her see what we were doing in 2013, there's absolutely no way she would have been like, oh, that place. You know what I mean? It just looked so ragtag compared to what they were used to looking at. And so sometimes you have to wait for that introduction because you're not ready. Like you think, oh, if I meet this person at the very, very top, it's going to change my life. And it's like, you're just a fan to them. You're just a fan. You're just a selfie. You're not actually adding any value. You're not providing anything new or resourceful or helpful. And so more often than not, I think, and sometimes you're not ready to meet that client. You're not ready to meet that foundation. You're not ready to meet that brand. People ask me all the time, like I've worked with some massive brands. My last endorsement deal was Liquid Death. You know, so I mean, I've worked with monster brands, and I can tell you right now, 2010 Mike was not ready to work with some of these brands, but 2025 Mike, like absolutely I can deliver. I didn't even know what deliverables were in 2010. You know, you learn the language and how to create whatever the ROI is that they're looking for. But yeah, a lot of times folks think, oh, I'm starting a business, I'm starting a nonprofit. If I could just meet X, and I'm always like, you're not ready to meet X. You have nothing to show them. You wouldn't even know how to talk to them, like as
you wouldn't even
peers.
speak their language.
No.
I think that's such good advice. I mean, it makes me think about a lot of scenarios that I am in now that if I hadn't gone through an acquisition, I wouldn't even know what the EBITDA?
Yeah,
No,
absolutely. 100.
how do you say that?
Yep,
You know?
yep.
So I want to go back to just, you move out of the Y Street or you move into the Y Street building.
Yep.
And you obviously start, I really want to just paint the picture for our audience. If you're looking at the expenses every month to pay for this building, and I'm sure a little bit of panic is setting in as you figure out that, I mean, that building is large.
Huge. So it was I funded it by becoming like as big of a youth speaker as I possibly could. I literally created two.
How'd you get into that? Yeah. How'd you
it was like two very, well, it doesn't matter what the environment was, whether it was like sports, church, summer camp, after school, like whatever it was, like whatever the setting, they were always like, Mike should talk to kids. It's like somebody somewhere would be like, hey, we need a speaker to come talk to these kids. You should ask that guy. And so since I was 18, I've always kind of been that guy. It's just the audience changes depending on what the scenario is. And so I knew I could speak and I knew I could get in front of people. But in Nebraska, I already played, basketball in Nebraska in high school and college. I had what I call weak ties. Like I had a lot of a network across Nebraska of people that were at schools. And so I hit up a lot of coaches I knew, a lot of friends that were teachers, and was like, hey, like I'm speaking, like if you guys ever need a speaker, let me know. So I was like driving across Nebraska I drive from like Chadron and the next day be in like Beatrice for like $500 for an assembly, like sleep in the car. You spend all the money driving all the way across state just to get there. But I just got started and kind of got my foot in the door. And then a friend called and said, Common Core had just passed. Do you remember when Common Core came out? It was like when Obama was elected, they always do these big educational things. So Bush was like, no child left behind. I'm pretty sure that was his thing, right? So we all grew up in the no child left behind era.
Yeah. Were we left behind?
We're still here. Yeah, I don't know, right? But so this new one comes out, Common Core, and what we knew as homeroom got changed to this thing they call advisory. And so instead of just like, remember it was a throwaway class where we would do homework and get caught up.
25 minutes late.
100%. That was where I did my homework every day. I would have a homeroom at the end, and I would just do my homework that I was supposed to do. Exactly. That was it. Yeah. So that class went away, and they were like, hey, it's going to be called advisory, and now all these kids are going to get broken out. It's like weekly or sometimes every day, and you're going to talk about like social emotional learning and character development. So now you have a great concept, right? But now you have like a history teacher who's 2 years out of retirement going, I've got to talk to these kids about what? And like imagine in today's world, you've got Gen Z coming up and you still have boomers who are teachers, and you're like, I've got to talk to these kids about those things. And it's very difficult to do. So I had a couple teachers be like, I love math, Mike. Like I love math. I don't know how to talk about this. They're like, can you create something that will help us? Like, how do we talk to kids about this? And I was like, wait a minute, like that's going to be a problem. Again, a problem that you can solve. I was like, I don't know how to talk to kids, but this advisor thing is happening. I was like, I'm creating a TV series. I'm from the era where they were in Channel 1 and we watched that 100%. You know what I'm saying? Oh, yeah. All that.
Challenge.
You get it. Anderson Cooper started there. You know what I mean? Like some of these big name guys started by just like reeling in the TV and making content for schools and this journalism and news. And I was like, I can create a character development show. So we called it The Harbor. off the phrase, a ship is safe in harbor. So like school's the harbor, but that's not what ships are for. So kids are not built just to go to school. They're built to go sail the seas and take on their own battles. And so every episode was about like, hey, when you leave the harbor, like these are the things you're going to encounter. So some episodes, yeah, exactly. It was very cool. It was very cool. And so some episodes are like critics versus creators. And sometimes people would share their stories, like entrepreneurs would come on. But we had Tony Hawk talking, we had, Kessie Ballerini and Ryan Sheckler and John Harbaugh. Like we had these huge guests come into the show and share their story. And then I did a full season of it. I got money from State Farm to do a distracted driving episode, like a don't text and drive. This was back in 2011 when it was just really becoming an issue. It was in 2011. I mean, it's 15 years ago. This thing was just kids were just now texting. We were T9ing while driving. You know what I mean? Like that's oh yeah, oh yeah, exactly. You're not looking, but the numbers are because you're like doing it by memory. And so that was in 2010. What it was, so like in State Farm was like, hey, we're going through all these like kids rear-ending people, crashes, all this stuff. They're like, can you make an episode? So I just titled it Distracted. And I was like, we're all just distracted. We're distracted when we drive. We're always on our phones. We're missing out on these things.
You might need to replay that episode today.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And so, and some of these things are more relevant today than when we first filmed them, because I was like looking at it from the kids' perspective of what are these kids going through, and those just turned on to be cultural trends. We're staring at our phones. There's so many things that 15 years ago when we started this become more relevant. But the Harbor, I did the first season on my own, and then I sold the rights to the show to Jostens, which is one of the yearbooks, rings, caps and gowns, the 90% market penetration, and everybody thought I was crazy. This is 2013 and 14. Everybody thought I was nuts. So like, you have to have a show on YouTube. Like, why aren't you putting this show on YouTube? You still can't watch YouTube in schools. Why would I put a show on YouTube? If you're going to put a show in schools, why put it on the one platform that they're not even allowed to access? And so I knew.
Would they actually if it wasn't in school?
Exactly, right? And no, they wouldn't. No one would. Yeah. And that's the thing, is no one goes to like, I'm going to really challenge myself in this weekly episode or show about character development unless I'm forced, Yeah. Totally.
You've always known your audience.
An area where I know a problem I can solve, an area I know I can add a lot of value, is kids are often, I call them captive, but truly they're forced. They're forced to go to this place, or they're forced to go to that place, or they have to be after school from 3 to 5, or they have to go to this assembly, or they have to engage with this character development because their school district said it. And those are opportunities where I was like, if you're really relevant with kids and can create stuff that they get excited about, well, what's a teacher want to do? Play the thing that they don't want to do, or play the thing that they do want to do? And so I was like, okay, I got to work on teachers and make this show so easy that teachers can hit play and print, because they're actually the gatekeeper to this thing. So I really focused on teachers, like what do we need to hear? What's going on in the classroom? Like, what are the topics that you're going to have to talk about that are coming up all the time? And I was really in tune with like listening to educators. And so the whole phrase was, it was so easy they could hit play and print. So they would play the episode, a discussion guide, and schools, it's like 5,000 schools still use it now. Like it's a very popular show.
Well, what happened to the show? You sold it to Joust?
I did it for 8 years. Yeah, I did 160 plus episodes. And so Jostens uses it. It's still like one of their most watched shows and resources. I get stopped all the time. Like, do you make videos? I'm like, 10 years ago. At least I still let that guy do.
Who's in it now?
Jostens has their own other spin-off versions of the show, but The Harbor was just kind of like my series that I hosted. And so like, that was it. There was no more episodes of it. And so.
But they just keep reusing it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Why doing it? You just felt like it was time?
And it was time, and well, the pandemic hit was part of it. And then for me, there was this very real, I think I evolved as a storyteller in some ways over those last 5 years. When the pandemic hit, I kind of was at this like, I've done 160 episodes of this show. Imagine 160 episodes of this podcast. Pretty soon you're like, what do we talk about that we haven't already talked about? And one time I remember like last season, I sat down in the studio and was like, guys, I got it. Like, we're going to do this episode. It's going to be like this. I'm going to talk about this. And everybody looked at me and they were like, we filmed that one 2 weeks ago. And I was like, we did? We already filmed it? And they're like, 2 weeks ago. And like, I had forgotten that we had done so many episodes. Like, I couldn't even tell you what some of these were because we did so much content that it was just time. And one of our filmers said, it's almost like Mike needs to go there for like 5 years and just go live his life and have all these crazy stories and then come back and he'll be ready to like talk about new things. And I kind of hit that point where I had sort of said everything I wanted and felt qualified and capable to say. And so when the pandemic hit, I started just going out and learning like a ton. Like, I went and got recertified. I went back to college. I started, going to school in different places and just like really pushed myself to learn more. So when kids come up to me and have questions, they're like, hey, how do I figure out what I want to do after high school? I got certified in Design Your Life, like design thinking out of Stanford. So I could answer that question. I went and got a Strengths Finder certification. I went and took a class in scaling and innovation in Paris at this like business college because I want to continue to push myself to get better. And oftentimes it's because on the other end of whatever I'm creating, it's typically a young person and there's impact. You know what I mean? Like that's just kind of the sphere that I always find myself in, is sort of that impact space. And so, yeah, I think for me, it's really a matter of, right before the show, we were kind of talking about this. There's this idea about compensation. Like, how do we want to be compensated for our time? And a lot of us, we have like thoughts around it, but there's sort of, Stanford would say there's like kind of research, and there's 3 ways that we like to be paid for our time. And so the way I got learned to think about it was, think like a soundboard, like mid, treble, and bass. And like everybody has a different mix. Like country's got a mix, rap has a mix. You know, your CD player used to hit the like super bass, you know, and it changed the dynamics. And so we all have a different mix for how we want to get paid for our time. And the 3 sort of dials are: money is one, impact is one, and then creative expression is another one. And so if those are sort of the ROIs we're looking for how we spend our time, you kind of have to ask yourself, okay, like, is this job paying me in money? Is it paying me in impact? Is it paying me in the freedom to go do the things that I want to do? And for a long time, impact has been my driver. It's just been the dial that was at the top the most, and I needed to raise and make a lot of money so that I could fund my impact driven operation, you know? And so I was kind of battling this, like, you need to make an insane amount of money so that you can give an insane amount of money away. All the meanwhile, it's being creative and being on stage and talking into a microphone. And so my 3 dials really got kind of pushed all the way to the max, and that's how you burn out. Like, that's not a good song. There's not a great song in the world that's mixed with mid, treble, and bass slammed all the way to the top. And it was just...
Did you realize that when you took the Stanford class? Did that hit you?
That way, like a ton of bricks, like a ton of bricks. I even have it in a slide when I talk to kids where I'm like, I know you think like you want to push all of these all the way up, but you can't. It's like too many masters to serve. It just really is. Like, if you're a highly creative person and you have to go make a ton of money being a highly creative person, you start to become at odds with your art. If you're an impact driven person and the ROI is human equity, but you have to go actually make a ton of money, those 2 worlds don't talk the same. And those 2 worlds don't think the same. And I think about this all the time. You don't start a nonprofit to create wealth. Like, what wealth?
No.
There's nothing at the end. There's no buyout. There's no, I sold and went public and I got my equity from my shares. Like, there's none of that. There's just, you start something. If you're lucky enough to see it survive, you pass it on and continue to move on and do big things. And so for me, there really has been this season of, I had a highly impact driven job. I had to go create a highly, a high revenue, high resource job so that I could fund these big ideas. And so it's taken me, I'd say, the last 5 years to really kind of figure out, like, okay, that was my first career. I spent 15 years as the world's biggest youth speaker while funding the Bay and growing that into what it is and scaling that to Omaha and opening a public high school and all the things that we did with it. And now I'm in this season of like kind of redefining what is Mike 2.0. Like, what's this next half of my career, this next chunk of my career look like? And thinking about the money, impact, expression, it's helpful. It's like, was this job, is there enough creativity in it for me, or is there enough impact in it for me? And for some people, it's like, is the money good enough? It just kind of depends on where you're at and what season of life you're in. And having a kid changed everything.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
What do you want to know?
Wedding. I'm very good friends with his wife, and they politely declined my invitation, which I didn't, I did anticipate was happening because their baby was due on the same day as my wedding. So
This is how the cookie crumbles.
It's
A lot of good life events happened that day.
You guys did send a lovely gift that I use every day. So let's get into when I last saw you. You and I were going back and forth on so many different ideas. And what I was really pleasantly surprised to see is that you are now stewarding your time and guarding your time because you've had a child that you want to be around. You were really present the last time I saw you. And not that you haven't been present before, but I think I genuinely noticed you were not on your phone, you weren't distracted. And this is something I'm also working on, so I'm mirroring myself. And you were mentioning that you see this next kind of iteration of life about really creating a world where you get to raise your own child in a place that feels authentic to you. So what are you doing to create that?
Yeah, I think I was just had a conversation about this earlier. When you're a speaker, it opens up an opportunity for you to not have to participate in the regular 9-to-5 cadence of life, is the way that I would put that. And so it's a whole different beast and entity of its own. And so I'm right now in these first like 5 years of his life, I really want to be as home and as present as I can. And so I'm shooting for what I'm calling 20 Saturdays a month, where it's like, I'm not like, I as a speaker, if I go out and travel and do things and I'm gone about 10 days a month, that feels like the max for me right now. Like, that I don't want to be gone any more than that. But it really creates this environment where like it doesn't matter if it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Sunday or if I've missed trash day 3 times. Like I don't even know what day it is half the time because I just get to be fully locked into like being home, taking care of little one, making sure Amber's good, and just like being there and being present. And then I get to leave and go speak. I get more sleep when I travel for work than I do at home right now, which is funny. But like I really just get to be fully present at home. And there's something about, you run a nonprofit in Lincoln for as long as we did, 15 years. People start ducking your phone calls because they know we're trying to raise money. And then, you know what I mean? Like you kind of understand sales. Sales is I'm the greatest sales guy of all time. Don't give me a spreadsheet, but give me a bird to go sell.
Fundraisers, he would say, I'm here to ask you rich people for money.
Yes. Yeah. And I'd be like, so give it to me. Yeah. Let's just cut to the chase. This is why we're here. Let's not beat around the bush. This is why we're here. And this is why we threw this thing. Yeah. You get the checkbook. That guy needs to add a 0. But, and so I think for me now, I want to model for my son and for anyone else out there that like, you can have your entrepreneurial rat race. You can play the game. I played the game hard, but you don't have to play the game the whole time. You don't have to play the game like that either. Like there's a million different ways to have a really impactful, really fun, creative life. And you don't have to play by anybody else's rules. Like you just don't. And some people, they're locked in there's a really cool book, and I'll toss this out there. There's a really cool book called The Third Door, and I talk about this a lot. And it talks about getting into this place of success in life. It's like getting into a nightclub, and there's kind of 3 doors in. So we've all had our club experience. We've all spent some time on O Street, if that was yours. But you're from a bigger city than that. Yeah, Real G, uptown, And so picture like getting into this club. Where's the regular line? You can't cheat. You can't cut. Doesn't matter who you know. There's a bouncer. And so that's like the regular line in life.
I never want to be in that.
But a lot of us are. Every 2 weeks, you take a step forward. You get your check. When you get a promotion, you take a step forward. And you just kind of keep inching your way forward. And that's sort of the traditional path. And if you're a millennial, you got told that was the way. Perfect grades, perfect college, perfect job, perfect life. Like follow these things and you will be successful. And that's the regular line. Then there's the VIP line. We're already rich. It's already taken care of for you. Your dad owns the thing and you know you're going to be just fine. When I speak to Husker athletes, I tell them all the time, you're in the VIP line for the 4 or 5 years that you're here, and then that door closes. Unless you were a Husker athlete in the 90s, then it's open forever and you can do whatever you want.
We love you, Aaron Davis.
AD, shout out AD. But that's exactly right. Like, he's got doors open to him for...
There's multiple other people.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one you and I have.
100%.
He's a spectacular speaker.
He is. He's a wonderful speaker, but that platform of like, being a Husker athlete in the 90s gives you another platform to ultimately do. If we don't win any national championships in the 90s, it's a different message for him altogether,
100%.
right? And so, like, that's the point of it. It's like there is this do VIP stuff, you can end up in the VIP door. And then I also want to pause and say, a lot of people, when they hear about the VIP line, they think 2 things, like, ooh, I want to get there, or, oh, it must be nice. I'm like, ooh, I wish that was me. But the truth is, the VIP line is the line that changes the most people's lives. And I fully believe this. Working with young people and in the impact sector for as long as I've had, the most impactful thing that can happen is a person of means has a relationship or builds a friendship with somebody who's in a different social class than them. And that genuine friendship authentically changes that person's life more than any program ever could. I promise you. If the phrase is it's not what you know, it's who you know, and you go put a bunch of kids that are all from the same low-income neighborhood in the same programs and groups together every single week after week after week, and they're not meeting anybody new, then who you know doesn't grow. And if you're only as strong as your network, we really genuinely need to get these kids cross-connected from different social classes, because that's honestly how you change the most people's lives. So if you're listening to this today and you're in the VIP line, the coolest part about your journey is you can take anybody in and out of that door that you want with you. Who's going to question you? It's the VIP line. Like, you've already got access to wealth and experiences and different opportunities. So take somebody with you, because that's how you change somebody's life. So those are my
most rewarding thing you can do.
Hands down.
And you introduced me to them, and they became a very close friend, and they will be in my life for them forever. And they weren't in the VIP line when I met them, but they are now.
And it changes things. It absolutely changes. It changes your life, changes their lives. It changes everybody's.
So
absolutely. It's awesome. It's awesome. And so then there's the third door.
I was waiting for the third door.
So the third door is down the alley, past the dumpster, around the corner. You got to knock on it. You got to talk your way past that person. And then they're going to open it up to the next person, the next person, the next person. And eventually you got to make your way through. But the third door is for hustlers, the entrepreneurs, the scrappy ones, the people who want to do it their own way. And so for a lot of us, you got to kind of audit which line are you in and which line are you listening to. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, what's actually screwing them up is they're just listening to the regular line bark from the regular line. Like, it's a bunch of people going the traditional path saying, you can't, or you shouldn't, or get back in line, or what if you lose your spot? Like, don't leave now. Oh my God. And these entrepreneurs are like, this isn't this isn't the pace for me, or this isn't the community for me, or this isn't the way for me. And so you've got to stop listening to regular line mentality. And then what I think is really messing people up is you got people in the regular line on the third door acting like they're VIP. And they're running around pretending to be VIP and wanting to be VIP and trying to look VIP and pretending that that's the line for them. All the meanwhile, you're missing opportunities. You're not in this place called success in life. And you're in earnest. We can kind of tell. Like, we can all see a fake when it's like you're flexing and flossing, trying to be something that you're not. And so I try to teach our kids, like, hey, which line are you headed to? Like, are you headed to the regular line? And that's perfect. Are you headed to the VIP line? That's the fit for you. Are you wanting to be in the third door, but you don't know how to get there? Like, kids got to decide what line they want to end up in. And then you got to figure out how to get there. But for a lot of kids, they want to do third door stuff so they can end up in the VIP line, but they don't know how to work for it. They just don't know how to work
all
for
my
it.
club experiences now, and I've always been the person who knows how to do the third door. Like, I have talked my way into the VIP experience. I'll never forget taking a vacation and going to the W Scottsdale, and like, I wanted to be like in the VIP area, but I wasn't going to pay for it. I didn't have that kind of money, but I wanted to meet the people in that area. And I just went up to the bouncer and I was like, look, I got 2 hot girls with me. I mean, seriously, I was like, I got 2 hot girls with me. We want to be over there with a bottle of champagne. You don't need to charge us. We're going to make you look really good. And we're super nice. And guess what? The best part is we don't get intoxicated because we're health nuts.
There you go.
And he let us in. And it was free. And I know that's like, everyone's like, oh yeah, okay. But for me, I was like, I will talk my way through the door.
I tried that once. It didn't work.
Yeah.
I got 2 hot guys here.
Yeah.
We
were not going to talk.
They were like, back of the line, pal.
I think if you're willing to be scrappy, you could pretty much talk your way into anywhere, or you can figure out the third door. But a lot of people just don't want to put on the creative mindset. Like, they see a obstacle and they don't think of it as I see an obstacle and I hear no and I just hear not yet.
Yeah.
Or like, how am I going to move that obstacle? I think you're very similar to me like that. Like, even with this podcast, like starting this podcast, I mean, we've gone through a lot to get this podcast going. And every time it's just like, okay, that's not going to work. Okay, that's not going to work. Okay, that's not going to work. But that'll work, And I think that's where people just get lost.
Yeah, and I think part of it is that we have this insane sense or fear of failing. Like, I'm gonna fail, and oh my God, and what happens when I speak, I put up my failure resume. It's like the worst things that have happened, right? And I managed the rail yard for like 22 days or something like that, right? And when I quit, it ended up in the newspaper.
It did.
And so I literally, now every time I speak, I'm like, I want you to, go ahead, Google Mike Smith rail yard. And the first thing that pops up is this news article about me quitting. And then I tell everybody, if you quit a job and it doesn't end up in the paper, I don't want to hear about it. And I'm like, there's a million failures. I've shot TV shows that didn't work. I've pitched ideas, spent tons of money in directions where things didn't work out, bet on the wrong horse countless times. But they're so scared to fail. And I'm like, ooh, I just learned how much do you learn from when the podcast doesn't go well? Way more than when you plug it in and you just nail it.
Yeah.
And so some of these huge swings that I've taken have prepared me for the next 3 or 4 swings. I know how to shoot TV shows because I pitched a TV show to ABC, NBC, Fox, like all the big wigs, and they all told me no for the exact same reason.
What was the reason?
They were like, it was actually very interesting. I made this show called Back to School where I made the middle linebacker switch lives with the kid from the musical. So the linebacker had to sing and the kid from the musical had to play football. And then I had a slam poet switch lives with the cheerleader. So the cheerleader had to do slam poetry and the slam poet had to cheer. It was like wife swap for kids in school, right? It was awesome. So awesome. Super heartfelt, really meaningful. You get to the top execs, Mark Brunette, who ended up being a Trump appointee. So this is the guy that did The Apprentice, sat me down and he was like, Mike, you're great. He's like, you're great. And he was like, you're like him. And he pointed to this thing of Trump. And he was like, you're fired. I taught him to say that. You know what I mean? He was like doing this whole bit. And I'm just sitting there watching this. And he's like, but nobody's going to watch you on TV, Mike. And he's like, let me tell you why. And he's like, you make people feel bad about themselves. He's like, he goes, this show right here. But I kind of heard the same message from everybody. He's like, this show right here, he's like, what's going to happen is people are going to go get their yearbook. They're going to go look back at who they were mean to, and then you're going to want to make phone calls to people and say, I'm sorry. And he's like, and that's not TV. He's like, that's not what TV does. TV is we sit down, we click this thing on, and we forget about our problems because we go and watch your problems. And he's like, you know why everybody likes The Biggest Loser? Because everybody's a winner. But the guy sitting there on the couch is watching these other people's problems, not thinking about his own. And he's like, you're about to make everybody think about their own problems. And he was like, you need to go on like educational TV if you want to do something like that. But he was like, TV? He's like, no, you got to shoot for, they're going to sit in this chair, they're going to click that button, and they got to forget about their problems to go watch somebody else's. And he's not wrong.
Was it a great lesson for you?
100% it was. I've learned how to shoot content completely differently from that way. Because part of it is if you want the
story brand.
Absolutely. And if you want the masses to pay attention to your thing, if you want the masses to tune in, you've got to be really mindful about how you talk about things, how you shoot things, how you say things. Even language is important. experts, if you think about language on like a 1 through 10 scale, experts talk like 8, 9, 10, EBITDA, ROI, right? Like deliverables, words that like
people don't want to hear that.
Well, they don't even know what it means. So it's like if skateboarders start talking about kick flip, heel flip, switch flip, we're like, I don't know what that is, right? Like a football guy starts going off about X's and O's, the rest of us shut down because experts talk at 8, 9, 10, but the world can only understand 1, 2, 3. And so if you go make content, if you're going to talk about stuff, you've got to talk 1, 2, 3 so everybody can understand it, not 8, 9, 10. And I was, as a youth guy who understands this, you kind of get blinders on and you get sort of tunnel vision. And so all of a sudden I was starting to talk in that world at 8, 9, 10. And I kind of got a good rude awakening of a lot of time, money, and effort invested in shooting a TV show to realize if you want the masses to watch your TV show, it's 1, 2, 3.
I like that you mentioned 1, 2, 3 because you talk about also building 3 lives.
Yes.
You talk about that in the 3 lives you're building.
Yes. And so this is kind of this is sort of how I landed where I am today. So I got a certification during the pandemic in design thinking from Stanford. So there's this whole class called Design Your Life. I didn't have any of the qualifications to get into the class, but I'm a talker and I wrote them down. Plus it was online. You didn't have to go to Stanford. So it was like their online cohorts during the pandemic. So I think they were just taking some of us from the bottom of the barrel because they would take the money, if you know what I'm saying. And so not like Stanford needs the money, but I got into this class, and it basically is you use design tools to, instead of designing an app or a software, you use those same design tools and design thinking, but the product you're designing is your life. And so it's called Design Your Life. There's a book, New York Times bestseller. Fantastic. They're coming out with another book here soon. But the whole premise leads up to this idea of creating what they call an Odyssey plan. And it's this idea of like, in the tech world, there's not one way forward. Amazon doesn't have one thing that they do. There's multiple. Facebook doesn't have one thing that it does. There's like multiple. And so the idea is when you're designing your life, don't have one path forward. What if there was 3? So life 1 is the thing that you're doing. Like whatever you say you're doing, do that, plan it for 5 years, and there's always design tools to help you do it well. But I always say, like, what if you got Schitt's Creeked? We all love the show Schitt's Creek, where like they lose everything and have to start over, right? And it's like, so what happens if life 1 goes away and you get Schitt's Creeked? What would life 2 be? And then like, what would you do? And it can't just be life 1. And then life 3 is the wild idea. Like, what's that thing that you're like, if I could do anything and money wasn't an option and I had to go do something, like what would I go chase? So I speak about this all the time, and I talk about these 3 lives, but I was like, man, if you're going to talk about these 3 lives, like you've got to be about these 3 lives. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to live these 3 lives as hard as I possibly can at the exact same time, and I do not care about overlap or crossover or friction or like whatever happens, happens. And a lot of friction happened, and a lot of crossover happened, but all 3 lives honestly kind of started exploding for me. So life 1 was, how many bays can I open? And the reframe now is, how can I scale the impact, not the logo? Like the Bay Lincoln, Bay Omaha, Bay Nebraska, it's going to be its thing, but can I show other people in other places how to open up their version of a 3rd place is what it's called.
Mike stepped out of the day-to-day and so now has an executive director and a board and a team that's running it. Yeah,
there's a fantastic team running the Bay, and I largely didn't run the Bay day-to-day for a long time because I was out speaking and paying for it anyway. So it's not like some new dynamic down there. It really isn't. It's just when you're the guy giving the most money, you have the most say. And when you're not the guy giving the most money, you do not have the most say. And that's just like how those things go. And so for me, it was like, okay, how can I scale the impact? Life 2 was, if I wasn't going to do the Bay, if I wasn't going to like open 3rd places around the world, what would I go do? And logic would be like, well, what's the thing I can do for the most money in the least amount of time that I'm really good at? And it was like, go run my mouth into a microphone. So just be a speaker. So life 2 is speaking, and can I maximize, and where can I get back into, and what can I do? And so life 1 is 3rd place, and I very often get to use my ability to speak to go talk these 3rd places into existence. But life 3, the wild idea, which is just totally different, is can I be an adventure guide in like Costa Rica, where you rent vintage dirt bikes and vintage motorcycles to surfers and adventurers around the world. And then oftentimes when you go to places like that, they'll pay you for like a 2-hour or 3-hour adventure guide to be like, hey, take me from this secluded beach up to this coffee farm, and then over the ridge of this volcano and down to this beach through some jungle trail. And every time I go on trips, I rent those adventure guides. So Baja, Costa Rica, like you name it, I hire someone to be like, what's the like version of this that I wouldn't find on my own? And it's always the most unbelievable experience and my favorite part. And so I was like, okay, in the money impact expression, like I would love to raise my kid in a place. And here's the why behind this. When you have a kid, and this comes from a guy who's raised more of your kid. I've worked with more kids than most of you could possibly fathom. Like 30-year-olds are still calling me dad. Do you know what I mean? Because I was like that figure to them back then.
I was sitting at coffee with Mike a few years back, and my assistant at the time came to bring me something. Remember my keys?
Yeah.
I forgot at home. And she comes up And her face completely changes. She looks starstruck. I will never forget this. Venna, you were so cute. She's like, I think you spoke at my middle school.
Oh, yeah.
And it was such a cool experience to see because I don't get to see that a lot just because we're around a lot of adults usually that are our age.
Yep.
And I'm assuming that's what happens to you all the time.
All the time. I'll be like at the runs a drive-through and some kid, I'll be like, hey, I'll take a number or whatever. And then they'll be like, do you make videos? They'll pull the drive-through. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, I recognize your voice. And then I pull up and they're like, yeah, I thought that was you. We watch you every Thursday or whatever. And so
cool.
happens all the time. But in the kid world, and this is really important for parents to sort of just to understand some research on what can you control in your kid's life and what can't you control in your kid's life. So the kind of the single biggest determining factor of things that you can control is the neighborhood your kid grows up in. And we all get that, right? Like what neighborhood, what part of town, where do you want your kid to grow up? I don't necessarily, Lincoln's a wonderful town, unbelievable town, but I don't necessarily know if I want my kid to be like Mike Smith's son in a small town like Lincoln, because there's going to be the bias, good and bad, that this kid's going to experience. Some teacher who I fired your life partner and now that you're teaching my kid at school, you know what I mean? Like there's that. And then there's the like, oh, he's going to get a free pass because it's Mike Smith's kid and we're going to be cool with it. And like a life lesson missed because they think that they're entitled to something. Like it's hard in a town that's like this when you've done as much as I've done with kids and worked with many kids as I've had to just, I want him to be able to make his own way. And so where you grow up is everything. And that's critical because that's kind of all you can control. And then the next thing is honestly like their informal friend group that they make around that like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that changes everything. That's where their identity comes from. That's who they want to be. That's I'm playing this sport. I'm wearing these clothes. I'm listening to this music. And as a parent, I'm sure you saw their identity start to get shaped by not you, but by their peers and who they were around. And so for me, there's this thing around, I've lived such a global existence, from Imperial, Nebraska to speaking all over the world. Like I've seen the planet and I really want our kid to have a global experience. And Amber, my wife, grew up in Panama, Central America. And so for both of us, like living in the jungles of Costa Rica or Panama and living this sort of adventurous lifestyle is the kind of life I want to raise my kid around. Like that's the kind of environment I want my kid to grow up in. And I've had so many people be like, oh, you've got a kid. Like, aren't you so stoked to teach him the game and teach him how to hustle? And I'm like, no, you don't get it at all. Like I did that so they don't have to. People always knock on like VIP kids that go to liberal arts school and enjoy their life. And I'm like, they enjoy their life. Why do you think we killed ourselves? So they could enjoy their life. Like that's the whole point of it. And so it's not that he's going to have a ton of money because that's not the thing that I'm talking about. But if you can raise your kid in paradise with a really cool business that you can pass down to them and a global network of people that they can meet that are going to travel all over the world, think about what you're setting them up for. If it's not what you know, it's who you know. And then our life experiences that we have become memories. And this was something I saw the other day that really bummed me out. Gen Z doesn't have the same childhood memories that we do. Like Gen Z's, because memories come from experiences, and experiences, remember when you were a kid and everything moved so slow?
Yeah.
It was because it was all new. So you're taking it in and you're sucking it in and you can't believe how different it is. It's like when you go to another country and time stands still, but in Lincoln, you're like, oh, it's already 3:30? None of this is new. Like none of this is new. And so for a kid, especially today, what's new about scrolling on your phone? What's new about looking at the same screen? What's new about playing the same video game with you? But there's nothing new, so these don't become memories. Like these don't become memories that stick and last.
Are they struggling to build memories as children?
Well, yeah, of course. They're struggling to build experiences that then turn into memories is what I would say. And so like if you have a really dynamic life experience, there's a really cool TED talk about your experiencing self and your remembering self. And they're not the same person. And they're quite honestly like your remembering self is dragging your experiencing self through the world. And so think about it in terms of if you went on a vacation, like if I
leave on Monday.
Yeah, well, let me say I pose this to you. Like, let's say Monday you both get to leave on a vacation for 2 weeks, and when you come back, they're going to wipe your memory of the whole thing. You're not going to remember it, no photos, no nothing, but you get to experience whatever you want. You would book a very different vacation than if you had the accountability of there is photos, and you will remember it, and your memory will not be wiped. But it's interesting to think, why would we go experience something if we didn't have to remember it versus like when we can remember something? And so a lot of us, we book vacations just for the memory, not the experience. Where's the photo? Where's the place I got to go so I can get this one picture of this thing versus like, I want to just experience, you know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of us where we do it just because we want to say, I have this memory of it, but we don't have the experience. And when you adventure for a living, which is something that I do, you can't plan. You can't plan for these wild experiences. You just got to put yourself into the environment, follow the crazy opportunity that comes your way, and then all of a sudden you have this unbelievable experience. 99% of the craziest Mike things I've ever done were not, I've got this plan. It was like somebody hit me up and was like, hey, I bought this little dirt bike. I'm riding from Greeley to New York. Do you want to go with me? And you're like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Of course I'm going with you. And it's like things like that turn into these giant experiences that become these lifelong memories. Well, if parents aren't trusting kids to leave the house, if they get a cell phone by the time they're 10 or 11 and now they're addicted to the dopamine hit of a screen, with video games and a one-to-one device, some kids have 5 devices. An iPad, this or that, you know what I'm saying? So they're inundated with all these like dopamine hits. So why say yes to some great big adventure that you know you're going to get excited about when you've got dopamine in your bedroom every night?
I talk about this all the time, the dopamine, pain, pleasure, teeter-totter is still offered.
Yeah, and it's they'd have an experience in Imperial, Nebraska, with no stoplight in your town. You had to be creative. We had to make our own fun, come up with wild things to do because it wasn't we couldn't just like go to the mall and walk around and bump into somebody. Like we had to drive up and down Main Street, and you couldn't text your buddy. If you saw him on Main Street, you'd hit him up and be like, yo, we'll be dragging Main tonight. Like, catch us out there. You'd be driving up and down Main Street. Our town is a mile by a mile. You turn around at the gas station and the car wash. So you're driving up and down, and if you saw somebody you knew, you'd flash them, and then you'd both turn right. You'd pull over in the church parking lot, a block up, and driver's side door to driver's side door, and you'd make your plans for the night, and then you'd go have these crazy experiences. Well, today kids are like, they can just text each other. They can go in their bedrooms and text 25 friends and see what they're up to and send Snapchats, and you'll see kids sitting in living rooms or basements just texting other people who aren't there, or texting each other who are there.
So weird. They're sitting in groups texting other people who aren't there, trying to say, hey, where are you? What are you doing? It's very strange. How do you think AI is making this problem worse or better for kids?
I think that, well, there's no doubt that it's going to make the technology more addictive. Like I don't even have a computer. Like I don't even use a laptop. But
I don't have a computer.
Haven't from the jump. What if you're traveling every day? You're not stopping to flip the thing. What's the Wi-Fi? You guys went through it. Like, what's the password? Like, not happening. I don't have a charger. Like, I'd have 3 ways to charge my phone. But like phone only. Like I've run my whole thing for 15 years from my phone because I was just too in the transition. But I can't tell you, even me, I'm on my phone way more than I used to be because of AI. Way more. It's made me smarter, faster, quicker. It's cut so many. I don't have to hire someone to do this. Proof of concept. Hey, ChatGPT, can you give me an architectural outline that looks like da 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 da, and it's done in a second? It's like that makes you dangerous, but it's also incredibly addictive. And I'm using it for work. Like I'm purely using it for like work.
I use it as a therapist sometimes.
Well, that's the number one. That's the number one use of it.
To me, and I'm feeling anxious. How do I respond?
Yep, it's the number one use of it today. But for kids, it's just gonna nice. But yeah, for kids, it's just increasing the dopamine hit from the screen. That thing that they can have access to. And so there's always going to be hey, this is going to be dangerous for the developing mind. But it's also very interesting because, for kids with learning disabilities, for kids that struggle in certain ways, for the kid who got C's professionally because I couldn't do all the stuff that the smart kids did. If I'm those smart kids today, I'm terrified for my job.
It equalizes the playing field in a lot of ways because it makes people who are creative able to do things that maybe they wouldn't.
And that's why I think it didn't make the playing field even. I think it unevened the playing field for those of us that are wildly. I can have 10 AI agents do what I used to have to pay a lot of people to do.
Yeah, do
you get what I'm saying? Yeah. Like all of a sudden, like I got really, really dangerous really, really fast, and it's only getting better and better and better and better and easier and easier and easier. And some of these, like, hey, I had this singular task that I went to college to do this job. They're not used to being so scrappy that they're figuring out, I am the marketer, I am the finance guy, I am the sales guy, I am human resources, I am customer service, I am building my own website. Like that's what a solopreneur does. And some of these folks that are in the regular line who are watching their job
disappear.
Oh, I had a friend who's in nonprofit marketing, and I was like, what are you actually doing? And he's like, he's just an AI agent. I mean, he's vibe code,
Yeah.
He's in AI all the time, but like he's like, AI is doing the job. I'm just prompting at this point, and then it comes out and he starts to tweak it a little bit.
It's scary because you have to become more human and more creative. And the only way you can do that is actually stepping away from the phone and being more disciplined. And most people lack the discipline to do that. So we're in a world where I think the most disciplined people who can get away from their phone, go have experiences, and go build humanness themselves are actually going to be successful. And the people who don't do that and who also don't learn AI are going to be sorely in trouble.
I think we're going to have two look back at this in 5 years and let's see if Mike was right. I think the two industries that are going to have just massive up into the, what is that? Up into the right, like chart growth is going to be AI and the human experience industry.
Anything related to human consciousness, meditation, wellness.
Concert tickets are going through the roof. Sporting events are going, like, just anytime large humans get together, that's going to be the thing. And so I think the human experience in some way, shape, or form as a business, if that's something you can get into as a young person today, like facilitating, creating the human experience, like event management and planning. For me, being a speaker, I think about this a lot. Like, let's just take hey, let's be competitive, cutthroat, capitalistic folks for a second, right? And like, as a speaker, you're constantly like, okay, who's the best? Like, who's coming up? Who's the thing? Who's the person? And as I turn around and look at the next generation who doesn't like to talk to people, doesn't want to get on a stage, has a hard time communicating in public, I'm like, oh my God, like, am I the last of a dying breed? Like, are millennials the last of a group of people that can talk to boomers and all the way down to Gen Z or Alpha without using code speak that only one generation understands and everybody else finds annoying? Like, there's some things about just being able to actually communicate as a human that AI is going to change because you're not going to have to do it. I find myself on like Gmail. I used to never send emails because I didn't want to spell things wrong and be like the weakest link on the team. I was like, I'm never replying. If there's 5 of us CC'd on this email, I'm not coming in. Like, the smart people will get to it. And now I just swipe right on Gmail and it's like my little AI guy's like, what do you want to say? And I'm like, say this. And then it's like insert, shorten, normalize. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm dangerous now compared to where I used to be. I'm like, what form of there do I use here? I don't even know, but like AI's got me. So I think there's going to be this very interesting dynamic of those of us that know how to use the human experience paired with AI. I think that makes you dangerous. Too much of a human experience person who doesn't understand the technology of it, you're going to be outdated and you're not going to be able to play the game. Exactly. Too much AI, but you can't make eye contact, or like the human experience makes you so socially anxious that you can't participate in it. Like, I think there's going to be these.
That's why I keep teaching spin and Pilates, because I want to know how to touch someone's body. I want to know how look at somebody and say, are you having a bad day? And being able to do that, and this podcast, like what we're doing here, allows us to continue investing in those skills, and it forces you to take time away from the screen, which is amazing. As we kind of wrap up our conversation, I know we've been going for a bit. This has been so good. Where are you headed now? Like, as an entrepreneur, what business are you building that you're most excited about?
I think that I'm going to go back to, I think I'm treating my life, I am the product. Like, at this point in my career, it's not Mike's got this, coding skill, or Mike's got this graphic design skill. It's like, I am the speaker, the content creator, the author. Like, there's this solopreneur journey for me that I am. And so I really, truly, not to go back to like the 3 lives thing, but like, I'm just going to ride out this 3 lives thing. It's worked so well. Like, I'm
sold on
4 years.
About 3 lives?
I'm 4 years into it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now,
yeah.
Like, why do I?
Right. That? Well, and here's another way to think about those 3 lives. If let's say you're doing life 1 and you get fired or something happens and you jump and you haven't started on life 2 or life 3 and you're starting from 0, that's a hard start. For a lot of people, if you lost your job today, you'd be applying for jobs, cold emailing, doing whatever. Like, I've got life 2 and life 3 cranking so hard that it almost forces you out of a full-time 9-to-5 because all of these other opportunities. For 4 years, if you go live these 2 other side hustles as hard as you can, well, it's crazy what can pop up. And so the best advice I can give to most folks is, if you don't love your 9-to-5 grind, go start a side hustle right now. And the time to quit is when your day job is getting in the way of your side hustle. That's when you know. When your day job is like costing you clients or costing you money or costing you opportunities, and your boss is starting to go, the last email I got from Cedars when I started the Bay, my boss titled, "When are you working?" And I was like, now is the time to quit. And it was like, I'm actually not. This is my 2 weeks. We're done here.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yes, there you go. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the opportunity. But the best advice I can give folks is, whatever you're doing for life 1, what does maximizing it for 5 years look like? Design that. What if that went away? What would life 2 be? And don't wait if life 1 goes away to start living life 2. See what happens. They call it dreamers, dabblers, and doers. First we dream about it, then we start to dabble in it, then we go do it. So I would tell everybody, do life 1, dabble hard in life 2, and that wild idea, don't leave it an idea. Like, do something in it. That's why I did this film festival. Like, I went and entered a motorcycle film festival and got 3rd and uncovered the history of Kawasaki in America. Started out in western Nebraska, not in Lincoln in the 60s.
With Jason, who's like the head of operations.
Yeah, the whole thing. Yeah, and so you
go do a tour. Have you done a tour
of
Kawasaki here.
I have, but did you know that Kawasaki started in Nebraska 12 years before that in western Nebraska?
Yeah, selling motorcycles I don't know. Yeah,
It was dirt bike. It was this old company called.
it
It
was
was
like the only thing around.
period.
Yeah.
And it was in Gearing, not even Scotts Bluff. You know what I mean? So it was in this small place. And so, but the reason I was so excited to get into this whole thing is I met all these vintage bike collectors. And so now I'm inside of this community of folks who have the vintage bikes. They have all the, if you're looking for parts for vintage motorcycles, it's not easy. Like you can't just call somebody. You've got to know people to do this. So if I want to go renting vintage dirt bikes in another country where these things aren't distributed, I've got to have a pipeline of engines and parts and tools and all these things. And so I've met all these vintage collectors who now I've got this relationship with. And so every year I challenge myself, do something massive in all 3 lives. Push yourself to the end, push yourself to quit, push yourself to try something new. But so for 4 years, I've taken these huge swings in every life and they've all produced something. And now it's really built to this culmination of, I've never had more fun. I've never had more opportunities that sometimes overlap and sometimes have nothing to do with themselves. But last weekend I was in Scotts Bluff with average age of that crowd was probably pushing upper 70s, 80s because they were all there in the 60s as teenagers when these bikes started. And now they wanted to see them and hear the history in this conversation. And that's very different from talking to teenagers at the University of Nebraska about what are you going to do after you graduate college. They're opposite ends of the spectrum, but there's so much depth and so much cool stuff there. But that's because I've been every year. I'm like, do something big in life 1, do something big in life 2, do something big in life 3. It got so busy that my life 3 life, I was like, okay, wild ideas. They're getting too big. Film festivals, traveling. I was like, all right, so 2026, I'm just buying 2 vintage dirt bikes and we'll fix them in my garage. That's my big thing at 26 is like, learn the bikes like the back of my hand so that if something breaks out in the middle of nowhere, I've got a shot at fixing it. And so it might not be like some huge financial commitment. It might just be like, oh, I went and learned something. And that's a lot of what I've done is like put myself in an environment where I can go take what I'm doing, compete in an academic setting against some of the smartest people in the world and see where I fall. And that's been a lot of what these last 4 or 5 years is like, can I take what I'm doing in some of the top academic environments out of the stuff that I know, pitch, win, compete, just like try to see how I do. And then what happens all the time is people tell me things where they're like, oh, that's not the way, this is the way. And then you learn something and you're like, oh my God, that actually is right. And I had a lot of people challenge how do I open more bays? How do I travel? I've had a lot of people challenge those things and it's completely pivoted the way I approach things. But I would have never done it if I didn't put myself in the deep end and just and try. And so, yeah, best advice I can give to folks is really think about what's that life 1, life 2, and what's that wild idea. And then if I could say anything, it would be go chase that wild idea. Like the quicker you get to chasing that wild idea, the more energy and the more excitement follows and the more opportunity comes with it. And before you know it, it doesn't seem like a wild idea. It seems like the idea, like it's the plan. And so that's really what I'm up to is going from this isn't some wild idea. This is just my life and the plan.
I think that's a wonderful way to end it. Thank you, Mike, so much for being here. If people want to reach out to you directly and they want to ask you a question, they want to follow you, where can they find you?
2 ways. Mike Smith Live on all things, website, all the handles. And then I also host a radio show every week on 93.7 The Ticket called Your Weekly Disrupt, where we call people who have been disruptive, surprise phone calls. Very, very cool show. But it's every Tuesday from 5 to 6 during drive time. So if you're in Lincoln and you're stuck in the car, tune in to 93.7 The Ticket on Tuesdays.
I love that you're making radio cool again. Thanks for coming on, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, dudes.